Hello, everyone. Today's webinar is going to be on E4473 and cloud storage. We are super excited to have you here. My name's Kat, and I'll be guiding you through today's session. So today, we're going to walk you through a handful of topics. First, we're going to talk about some prelim types of things to get started, some stuff you want to double check ultimately. Next, we will go through the entire E4473 process. After that, we'll move on to managing and correcting transactions and forms. And finally, we'll wrap up with some reporting and cloud storage. Throughout the session, feel free to send in your questions using Zoom chat. We will answer as many as we can on the spot, but if not, we'll get to them at the end of the session with our Q&A. And Luis, my partner here, he is going to help handle those questions. All right, so the goal for getting started is just to make sure that the store is configured correctly before getting started with E4473. So the very first thing that we're going to want to do is head into our system configuration, onto our information tab, and just make sure that the FFL number and the business name matches what's on your FFL. From there, we want to head over to the configuration tab, down to the firearms portion, and just make sure that we do have those automatic email addresses in there. Now, if that very first email address listed on your configuration is incorrect, any email thereafter will also fail too. So that's why it's super important just to make sure that everything is on the up and up and those emails do get sent out. So with that being said, even though I just have one listed here, you can have multiple emails listed. And we normally have your Chief Law Enforcement Officer, which is commonly referred to as your CLEO, as well as internal email addresses too for your records. So as those 3310s get sent out automatically, one will get sent off to your CLEO, one would get sent off to you. The next thing that I just want to kind of bring up is the intake of firearms. So anytime you see this little book icon when you're bringing in firearms, whether it's from a customer or from a vendor, that just pretty much is going to get logged in your A&D book. So that's important because if the firearm doesn't get logged in your A&D book, it's not going to know to dispose it through your A&D book. So always make sure this little icon is available when taking in firearms. Another housekeeping item is just payment options. So with cloud storage, you have the ability to select whether you want to pay at pickup or pay up front. If you only have E4473, pay up front is going to be the only option for collecting cash. So the difference between these is that if you elect to do pay up front, you're going to collect payment before you do the actual background check to release the firearm. For pay at pickup, it's going to be you collect payment after the background check is complete. Now, the only kicker there is going to be with your pawn redemptions. Your pawn redemptions will always request that you pay up front, even if you have pay at pickup enabled in your system configuration. And the very last thing to kind of cover on our getting started is going to be E4473 account. So with Bravo's E4473 product, we do everything digitally. So your customers would go in and essentially make an account for the E4473 website. In here, forms must be started and completed by the same user. So for instance, if I go in and I go to start a form and I have to come back because I got a delay, if I started my form with my personal email address and then came back and created a brand new account with my work email address, the form would fail, essentially saying, hey, this form was started by another user. So we do want to make sure that forms are started and completed by the same exact account. Now, some pro tips that some of our stores have used is they went through and created a standard account that they just overall use for their store. So they would just create the account, log into it, and all of the forms that are completed would get stored on that store account. No need to worry about mixing information because the QR codes that you'll see during that E4473 process all link to that person's transaction. So only their information and that firearm would be linked to that particular QR code. Okie doke. So we're going to head right into the meat and potatoes of it all, and that's going to be the E4473 process. So this is ultimately going to be the goal, is to understand the full flow of the digital E4473 process, particularly how to handle sending out the digital form, reviewing that form, processing the background check, recording different responses, and ultimately disposing that firearm. Now, we do have a little disclaimer down here at the bottom. The scenarios shown today typically represent the most common use cases for completing E4473s in Bravo, but you always want to complete firearm transactions in accordance with federal, state, and local regulations. So, for example, if in your state you don't use eNICS system to do background checks, be sure to process your background checks using your governing agency. Now, before we get started into the fun part, I did want to just break down a few instances of our E4473 start screen. So number one is going to be the customer, and that's going to be the customer that is attached to that particular situation. Number two is going to be our status bar, and this is going to show where you are in the current process for disposing of that firearm. So for instance, we've already gotten the item attached to it, we've run it through our tender form, and now we're at the process of sending out that form. And the little text down here just lets you know we're starting it. When it comes to the point where we get the form back from the customer, it would go to reviewed. Now, once we're done reviewing it, we'll get a nice little check mark here, and we'll move into the next process. So that status bar will track the process throughout the entire thing. Number three is going to outline each firearm that is attached to the particular transaction. And then down at the bottom, we have the section that shows the numerical amount of firearms that are listed for the 4473, which will also be recorded on your 4473. And then also down here, we have the paid status of the item. So at this point, if you are pay up front, this would show that there's no balance due. But since this store is processed for pay at pickup, there's going to be a balance due. Number five is going to be your lower menu options. And there's a variety of buttons down here. We have our refund button. So if the customer decides to cancel the transaction or isn't approved and they have pay upfront enabled for the store, when you select this, you're going to head back into Bravo so that you can refund the customer for the amount that they gave you upfront. The send link button is going to be what you click to basically send the form out to the customer. And you have a variety of options to do this too. You can text them a link to their cell phone. They can scan the QR code with their mobile device. You can even print out that QR code to the receipt so that they can scan it. Or one of my faves is just right click on that QR code and paste it directly into the web browser. For gun show, if you're at a gun show, you can add in your gun show information manually. But if you have trade show mode enabled, it will automatically add that information to that 4473. Next up, we have private party transfer. When using that third-party transfer feature from the dashboard, it will automatically record the private party information here. But if you're not using that feature, you can manually add it in for your records. Now, the View 4473 or E4473, you can view the form through different processes. And the amount of information shown will be different depending on where you're at in your status up here. So for instance, since we haven't collected any customer information just yet, when we click on View E4473, it would only show the firearms listed for that form. Once the customer fills out the form, then it would start showing the customer responses onto that form. The next button we have here is Notes and Attachment. So this one is going to be dependent on whether you have cloud storage or not. If you only have E4473 without cloud storage, you'll only see the word Notes, and that's because you're not going to be able to add any attachments into your store. Save and suspend. What that is it saves your current spot so that you can essentially free up your computer so that you can help the next customer. So let's say we send out the form to the customer, they're off filling it out. Instead of being stuck on this screen until your customer comes back with that form, you can save and suspend it so that you can help the next customer in line, so that you free up some time and some space in your store. Lastly, we have number 6, and this is going to be the right side green menu where you can print blank E4473 forms in English and Spanish, identify if you're doing a manual form as opposed to doing it digitally, and then this part here, cancel E4473, is basically just giving you the option of starting a form over. At that point, if it ends up being different users or they can't seem to complete that form, we can always cancel it and start the process over completely. The refresh button will essentially refresh the system where it's at. And then clicking next will not only refresh it, but move the process into the next status of the form. So ultimately, that's kind of what we have on navigating it. Now let's get to the fun part. Before we dive into the full E4473 process, let's meet some of the customers we're going to help. We have Sam, an artsy, observant, and always in the middle of the chaos, whether she's asked for it or not. Then there's Tim, the office prankster, laid back, charming, and somehow always knows just enough to get things right. Brian, he's the real troublemaker, full of confidence, short on follow-through, and usually at the center of whatever's wrong. Clive lives for paper and policies. If it's not printed and filed, it doesn't count. Devin, our lovable wild card, he means well, but his attention span is pretty questionable. Then there's Manly. With Manly, he's always waiting for something, whether it's a mixed response or just until the end of his shift. So we're going to take each of our customers and we're going to help them to walk through the entire process. So our very first customer we have up is going to be Pam. With Sam, we are basically going to send her the paperwork. She's not going to have any errors. She's going to get a proceed. So we're going to do this from start to finish without any hiccups. All right, so we're going to search for Sam. Select her. We're going to get our firearms scanned in. And we're going to tender it out to get us to our E4473 start screen. Okay, so what we want to do is head to the bottom of the menu bar, click Send Link, and this is where we can go ahead and send our customer their form to their mobile device. In this case, we are going to just copy the link and start it here so we can show you what the form looks like from the customer's perspective. All righty. So in here, let's go ahead and make this just a tad bigger. We have our ATF form, essentially. It will show all of the notices and the directions. On section A, it will show the firearm directly from Bravo. When we click next, it's going to bring us to where the customer starts completing their information. The great thing about these forms is they are smart forms, which means that all of the information we have here is going to link directly to Bravo to let us know if there's any errors with the form, and also help assist in navigating the information over to our E-NICS background check. Also, when we pop in the state, you'll see that it is not a free form, so it allows you to type in, but ultimately everything will be spelled correctly, which is really nice and will help eliminate some of those types of errors. If you click other country or countries, it's going to open up the respective boxes to fill out. But if you are a US citizen, then it will make those not applicable as well. So very intuitive, making it super easy for customers to fill out. Then we have our section B. These are the prohibited person questions, and we are going to complete these. Now on desktop, these are much bigger. If your customer is using mobile devices, it could be really easy to accidentally click the wrong button. And we will show you that when we head into another scenario on how to correct those issues. Another thing that we have here is that when we're completing the customer portion, gone are the days where you accidentally put in the wrong date. So for instance, if I'm still stuck on yesterday, it is going to tell me, hey, you can't do that because it can't be in the past. It also means that it will not allow us to do anything into the future either. So that is another error that the E4473 process will help eliminate on your form. So once we go through and the customer finishes their form, they're going to come back to us and let us know, hey, I'm done with my form. So we're going to close that out, and we're going to click next to basically refresh and move the process from started to review. We're going to grab our customer's ID card where we can start filling this out, while we also take it and compare it to all of the information that our customer has completed on their digital form. So at this point, we're looking, the address is correct and it matches their driver's license. Everything looks perfect. Nothing to really correct on this form. So we are going to go ahead and accept her form and move it into the background portion of this. When we click this NICS eCheck button, what this does is it's going to bring us to Chrome, because that's what it works with. And with a Chrome extension, it's going to take all of the information that your customer completed on their form and basically fill it into the appropriate fields on your E-NICS check. So that will eliminate that data entry. Now, we did get our E-NICS check back. We got a proceed for our customer, so we're going to record our response up here. We are going to enter our NICS transaction. And then also remember, down at the bottom, we do have additional buttons down here. So if we were looking at the E4473 screen at this point, or the E4473, we're going to see our form completely filled out, because at this point, it's all done with different signatures from the customers and all of their questions. Now, when we go to click next, it is going to say, hey, employee, we need you to certify that the information that you have is true and correct. And when we hit accept, it's basically going to finish out that form. Now, if you have cloud storage, no form will print because it will automatically be stored on the cloud. So you don't really need any paper backup. If you don't have cloud storage, a form will automatically print anytime you basically process whether it is transferring or not transferring. So with Pam, we are all done. We're going to collect our payment. And since Pam had already bought a firearm from us, it's going to let us know that, hey, you need to complete that form 3310. And the great thing about this is since everything was done through the E4473, the form will be completed by Bravo and emailed out automatically. The only time you would have to do something is if a manual form was completed, which Bravo will also let you know, manual forms were completed. Here's the information that you need to complete your form. So once we click OK, it's going to bring us into do our 3310. We can view it down here so that you can see everything is already entered into the system. If you need to provide any additional information, you can do so here as well. We're going to go ahead and click next so that we can finalize our transfer. Accept our cash and save out our customer. That means that the form is complete. The firearm is disposed from your A&D book, and we had no issues with that particular scenario. Okay, so now we are heading into our next scenario, and this is going to be for Devin Malone. So Devin, he makes a handful of mistakes here and there. So we're going to have some issues to correct on Devin's form. So ultimately, we're going to have to resubmit it back to the customer for correction. And when we process it through the background check, we will get a delay. All right, so let's pull Devin up. Our customer has already completed their first form. And as you can see, we have some little boo-boos. Our customer went through and just transposed. He put his first name where his last name is and his last name where his first name is. So we're just going to go ahead and click here that he's got to fix those. And we're going to resubmit that form back to him. So when we send that QR code, we are going to pull up E4473 and correct those issues. So anything that you mark on that form as need to fix, it will highlight in red like this so that they understand that these are going to be the portions that they have to correct. Everything else will stay filled out with exactly what your customer had put on their form. You would make sure that all of their questions are answered correctly. And they would go back through and ultimately sign and redate their form. Okay, so we're going to head back into our Bravo system because our customer is done making those corrections. We're going to check it over. There's nothing highlighting that's incorrect. We're going to make sure this is all right compared to their ID. And that fix field is right here with these check boxes. So driver's license. $20.50. All right, so everything looks good on the form. As the store, we're going to accept his form. And Devin, when we did the background check, got a delay. So we're going to go ahead and select that he got delayed. We are going to put in our Brady date. So 1, 2, 3 business days. We can release it to him on the 8th. And we are going to put in our transaction number that we received from the ATF. Once we click next, it's basically going to save the transaction where it is, and it is going to bring us back to the home screen. Now, with our next customer, Clyde Shrew, he is pretty much going to request a manual form because he really doesn't believe in digital things. So at that point, we're going to give him a manual form. He also has a CCW, which means that we don't have to do the background check. And we're just going to go ahead and move through the process with a manual form. Now, manual forms in Bravo will have to be uploaded into Bravo when you're using cloud storage. So if you have cloud storage as part of your lineup package, then you just have to make sure that you have some kind of scanner so that as you get to that point where Bravo requires you to scan it in, you can get that form, upload it to Bravo, and finalize it. We already printed out a form for him and handed it over to him. So we're just going to select from this right side menu, manual form entry. We're going to put in the reason why we are doing a manual form. So at this point, since this is a manual form that your customer is going to be handwriting, you're going to have to do the entire review process by hand. So you're going to have to look through, make sure everything is corrected. If something is not right, they would have to, correct the actual form, and it won't tell you anything inside Bravo. At that point, you would make the decision on whether you're accepting the form if it's good to go, or if you need to deny it because something is not good. Down here, you can see that this is highlighted in yellow. That's just going to be an indication that we do have cloud storage at this store, and we will have to upload something to that form or to this record. Now in here, we're going to go from NICS and swap over to CCW since he doesn't need to do the background check. We're going to put in the information we need to. And there's no expiration on Arizona forms, so we're just going to leave that blank. So now when we go through, here is where we would upload our customer's form. But even if you forget to upload it, if you click next, a box is going to come up saying, hey, you need to upload a form. Now with cloud storage, there's no way to bypass this. So you're going to have to upload a form to here. So that's why it is vital in getting a scanner when you're getting started with cloud storage, especially since once you upload something, you can't remove it. So you can't even put like a placeholder in its way, because then that placeholder will be there every time you go and you look at the customer's attachments, which means that when your ATF agents come in to do an audit, they'll be able to see that placeholder. So best practice is just make sure you have that scanner so you can upload the actual true form. So we have our form right here for him. We're going to add it to our documents, click OK. And now we're going to finalize our transaction. So now we are heading into some denials. We have Brian Howard, and he has pretty much went through buying the firearm, doing his form, and he answered yes to 21C, which makes him a prohibited person. So ultimately, the store is going to say, hey, we sent you back the form to Brian. Make sure you check and see if everything's okay. So Brian went through his form. He said, you know what? Everything looks good. It's right. So at that point, we have to go into his transaction. $20.50. And the great thing about Bravo is that if your customer has answered one of these prohibited questions, and you can see it's highlighted in red, which means it's a really bad mistake. At that point, if you even attempt to accept it, they're going to say this form doesn't pass review, and it's going to stop you from accidentally accepting the form. So it's almost like a double take. It's kind of has your back. So since we know that this customer is under indictment for a felony and he cannot own a firearm, the store is going to outright deny that form. It's going to basically let you know, hey, once you do this, you can't make changes. A denial is a denial, which is fine because we don't want him to have this firearm. We're going to sign off on it, and this form is going to print if you don't have if you don't have cloud storage, or it's simply just going to be stored on the cloud. We could hit refund and then click next. It brought us back to the customer, basically canceling that hold and canceling that sale. Now for the second scenario, we have Brian. He's back again in our store. He came after shift change, and this time he filled his form out perfectly. He did not let us know that he was a felon. Now, luckily, when we sent the background check through, it did get denied. So let's show you how it looks like when a form gets denied in Bravo. He's already completed his form, which means that it looks A-okay. We're going to head into entering in our driver's license. We are going to compare it to our information that he provided digitally. And the store is like, hey, everything looks great. No need to worry. We're going to accept this form. But when we did the background check, it instantly came back as denied. We're going to enter in our transaction number. And what this does is when we hit next, it's going to say, oops. It's going to basically bring us back to Bravo and say, hey, this is a cancel. It's going to print out that denied form if you don't have the cloud storage, or if you do have cloud storage, it's going to automatically save that denied form in Bravo. All right, so our very last kind of scenario that we're going to cover in just the E4473 process is how to do an online sale without an integrated platform. So we have Jane Doe who bought a firearm online, and we're going to be sending it to Acme Guns for them to do the background check. So in here, what we're going to do is we're going to find or create our customer Jane Doe. So here she is. We're going to go ahead and select her. And since we are going to be sending it to a third party on behalf of her, we're going to head to the left-hand corner here, select third party transaction, and we're going to head to business name since we're sending it to a local FFL. All right, Acme, and complete our firearm sale. Okay. When we click next, it's going to basically bring us into our page where we can go ahead and verify that FFL number to make sure it's still valid. And if everything is great, we can go ahead and release and click next. If we're unable to verify the FFL, we can hold items and click next, and it would kind of put it into a hold status. In this case, we checked out the FFL and it is all good. So we're going to click next. And this is basically going to say, hey, we are sending this firearm to Acme. In our disposition section in our A&D book, it will show Acme as where it's going to. And then Acme will complete the form to Jane Doe to dispose it to her. The next portion of today is going to be managing and correcting transactions and forms. So what we are going to do here is know what happens after that first response happens, and also when forms are finalized, how to handle updating them. So in here, just a quick little information. When we head to pending transactions, there's going to be 3 different statuses you can see for firearms. There's going to be a firearm in process, and that's basically when you hit that save and suspend button on that E4473 screen, and it just basically queues that up. It's before you complete that background check. So if you haven't done the background check and you were saving and suspending to help another customer, you would essentially try and find your firearm in process to pull that firearm back up, especially if the customer has a lot going on in their pending transaction. Firearm holds are when the background check has already been completed or processed, but the firearm has not been released to the customer. So this status would most likely be seen when your customer is in a delay situation. Lastly, firearm approved is going to be when you've done the background check, you've got to proceed, and the firearm was still not transferred to the customer, disposed to the customer. This typically happens if your area or state has a hold period. And so at that point, it's been approved, but legally you still have to hold the firearm for X number of days before you can release it. So when your customer comes back in, if you have multiple firearms that you're in the process of, you would know that the firearm approved status is what you'd look for to kind of push that through. All right, so we have Tim Halford. He came in last week and he got a delay. So at this point, he came back because the Brady hold is over and he wants to pick up his firearm. So we are going to go ahead and pull him up in Bravo. And with this, when it comes to performing this without cloud storage, there's a few different ways that you can do this, right? You can either scan in the customer's receipt, or if you head to the lower left-hand side, you can click your pending transaction. And in here, since he's on hold because he got delayed, this would be the firearm that we need to finish out the second response for. So once we pull that into our staging area, it's going to bring us back to our form. Here's that first response we got. We're going to input our second response, and he did not get a proceed, but since it's past the Brady date, we're just going to go ahead and say no response was provided within the 3 days, and we are going to go ahead and dispose that firearm to our customer. Now, since we're giving it to our customer on a different day than the day he completed his 4473, he has to go in and recertify that the information he gave us before is still true and correct. So at that point, that's what this means. We are requiring a second signature. We're going to click to send that link to the customer. This is what it looks like when they have to do a recertification. So it's just going to pull up that section D. They don't have to go through all of the different, pages. They're just going to sign off saying, yes, everything is good. And it is today's date. This also, for the recertification date, does not allow you to do a day in the past or a day in the future. So no more errors on your dates there either. We're all done here, and we're going to head back to Bravo. And we are going to go ahead and click next. This is the signature he gave us the first time. Here's the signature for the last time. Everything still looks good. So we're going to go ahead and accept it. And we are going to certify the information ourselves as well. Time to tender out the transaction. And when we do, that firearm is now going to be disposed to our customer, and he is good to go. So for Manley, he came in last month. He got a delay, and while he got his delay, he was about to head on to vacation. So he had been gone for quite some time. Well, he finally got back from vacation. He came back in and he's like, all right, I'm ready to finish my firearm transaction. Now, with this, we are going to pull up Manley like we have cloud storage. So there's a few different ways that you can do it. You can do it the exact same way that you can without cloud storage, which is scanning the barcode on the receipt or heading to pending transactions. But another way is that on your dashboard, you have your E4473 portal. And what this does is it shows you, hey, you have, your outstanding statuses for the forms that you've completed. So I am going to go ahead and head into my NICS processing. I'm going to head to Manley's form, and I'm simply going to double click it, and that will bring that form directly into the transaction screen where we can head right into the E4473 NICS processing. So it's a little bit quicker than saying search for customer, pending transactions, find it, and clicking through. Ultimately, if they have their receipt, which most folks might not, that would probably be the quickest because it's a simple scan and then just right into the processing screen. So he got a delay. We're going to head to the second response. He did get a proceed back on forever ago. It was on, February 28th, he got the response. So when I click next, what Bravo is going to do is say, hey, this form has been more than 30 days old, which means it's no longer a valid form. So at that point, in order to do this transaction legally, we're going to have to do a whole new form. So when we hit yes, it's going to cancel the current 4473, and it's going to start the process all over again. So assign it out, and it brings us back to the start form status where we can essentially start it from fresh. I'm not going to go through the entire process because it's basically like just starting a brand new form. All righty. So the next one we have on here is Tim. So Tim came in earlier, and with Tim, he picked up his firearm because it passed the Brady date. Well, later on that evening, we got a NICS update, and it turns out that they said he was denied. So we let them know, hey, we've already disposed of this firearm. And then ultimately what we do have to do is update the response in Bravo. So let's go ahead and update it in Bravo now. We are going to head to our void view transactions, and we are going to find our transaction for Tim. Down, okay, this is him. All right, so we have Tim's transactions here. We're going to highlight his transaction, and we're going to head to view NICS. Now, when we go here, this is going to show us our initial response, our second response, and it's going to also allow us to update after a firearm has been transferred. So at this point, we are going to go ahead and select that it's been denied. We're going to select the response date that we received that denial from, update the corrected 4473, and basically save it out. Now, our very last situation is going to be that flight troop, after we did an internal review of our forms, we noticed that he put the country instead of the county, which happens a lot. So we called him, he came in to make the correction on his form, and now we have to upload the form in Bravo. Now, if you are just using 4473 and you don't have cloud storage, at that point you would grab his form, you would make the correction on his form according to regulation, and you would refile it with your paper forms. If you have cloud storage, we are going to head to the E4473 portal, and we are going to basically go through and find his form. Now, here's where some of the reporting comes in that's really helpful with E4473. We're going to head to ad hoc reporting. And we know that he completed a manual form, and he did that manual form today. So we're going to put, we know we're looking for a form today, and we're also looking for type, a manual form. So at that point, when we click OK, we have a finalized one, which was a CCW. So here, we're going to head to either the right side menu to click Manage Attachments, or right-click to Manage Attachments here. We had him correct his form. We're going to click Add in the lower left-hand corner. We're going to add the updated form. And now we have both of his forms. We have the original form he completed, and then we have the updated corrected form. Now we're heading into some reporting. Now, without cloud storage, you have your different areas where you can go for research, right? If it is a loan, you can head to your loan buys to go through ad hoc reporting to find certain firearms. If it is an inventory item, you can research through your inventory ad hoc reporting. The other thing we have is that if you head down to your reports, you also have your ATF A&D book. Now in here, you can sort by any of these different criteria. Now there's different formats on here as well. The ATF standard print version is going to be for how the ATF really likes to look at their book. Internally, you'll want to switch this over to Bravo print version because that gives us the line number, and that's what allows us to basically look at the 4473 or make corrections to the book. So at that point, if we wanted to see any of the firearms that had been disposed between the last 2 days, with the Bravo print version, we have those line numbers right here on that side. Now, when you make a correction to the firearm book, it's going to show the line number, and it's also going to say this one has been corrected, see line 35, and it's going to show you what the new one is with the correction. So at that point, let's say we're going to update line 31. So if we hit edit ATF record, line 31, it's going to pull up that ATF record where we can go in and make adjustments to that particular record. So this is pretty much how you would handle things on a no cloud storage type of basis. Now, the other portion of that is with that A&D book criteria. You can go through and search by serial number. The only limitation is that you can't do partial serial numbers here. It would have to be the full serial number. So if you are only provided a partial serial number on a trace request, you would basically have to head to those management areas, do a little research, and then find the item there to, essentially find the 4473 to send out. With cloud storage, you have access to, excuse me, I'm just heading to my notes. With cloud storage, you have the access to head to that E4473 portal. So this is only available with cloud storage. And in here, you have statuses for all of your open forms, so pending 4473s, incomplete 4473, as well as ones that are in NICS processing. The other thing you can do is your ad hoc reporting, which will allow you to basically go in, select one criteria, multiple criteria, and look through what information you need. So for instance, we only did one for 1 day for a manual form. But let's say we wanted to give a range. I want to see how many manual forms were done within the month. So at that point, I would click on the little blue operator here, and it gives me different options: equals, doesn't equal, a range, in, less than, greater than, and last days. So here I'm going to go ahead and enter in a range. And I'm going to say from March 1st to April, I want to see how many manual forms I did. So at that point, any and everything you can think of as far as reporting, you can create all of your own custom reportings at the drop of a hat. Now, the other thing that this portal does is it gives you the ability to do your own 4473 audit. And the 4473 audit session is very similar to how the physical inventories are kind of set up, where you go through and you add a new session. You can create by new or copy from an existing session that you have. And then from here, March, we'll go April forms because I don't know if I have any in March. April forms, and you can start adding more criteria. So I know I definitely want to do just a range for April so far. And I want to do all of the statuses. So instead of being equal to just one status, I would go through and I would select store canceled. I would select finalized. I would select, any other form I would want to look at. So let's say I just want to see those ones. When I click next, it's going to pull up those form statuses for that date range that I selected. here's going to be all of the forms that I would have to review. And when I hit save, it's going to essentially say, here's your audit. And when we hit audit this session, it's going to bring up those forms where you can see each of the attachments that are on here. So when I click on that, all right, so it's going to pull up those forms where you can go through and you could look to see if there's any type of errors on here. This very first one did have an error, but I do see that there was a second form on there. So when I go through and I look at the corrected form, I could say, oh, this was perfectly corrected. So at this point, there is nothing wrong. I'm going to go ahead and review it. Head to the next one. Maybe when I check out this form, I want to flag it for a correction. So at that point, I would go through, I would look and see what kind of correction it needed to be done, and I would flag it and I would write a note in. Let's say, customer middle name missing. That's not a serious issue, but we definitely would want to get that corrected. Now, this third one, maybe there was a big violation. And at that point, you would enter in your note for your violation. It could be like, I don't know, prohibited person or missing supplemental documentation, whatever it is. So at that point, we would go through, and as we have this all completed, that would be our review of our forms within that date range. So let's go ahead and finish up here. When we are done with our audit, we can go ahead and complete it. And at that point, once it's closed, you can still go back into that audit session. And let's say your customer came in and said, I need to correct this error. We can at that point head to the attachments and add to correct that issue. So that's how you can always kind of come back and really fix some of those issues that you've identified on your own before the ATF even comes in to your store. Now, the very last thing that I did want to talk about as far as reporting is going to be the ATF audit function. Now, on your home screen, switch user. Okay, so at the very bottom here, we have the ATF audit login. So when you have an auditor come into your store, they would essentially have an entirely separate portion of Bravo that they would log into. And the great thing about this is that they would only have access to the date ranges and the forms that were completed within those date ranges. They wouldn't have access to any other reporting or your inventory or your cash drawers. It's completely separated. Now, Bravo does support multiple agents for the ATF audit. The only thing that you would have to do is, let's say they're coming in to audit the last year. So instead of it being one person for the entire year, you would basically break it up. So if we had two agents here, we would give one agent 6 months and the other agent the other 6 months. We would head here and basically say the cutoff for this agent is going to be October, and then the next agent would start October 3rd and then head to April 2nd of 2024. Now, anytime you create an agent, password, first name, Sam Smith, when you create an agent and you hit submit, it's automatically going to require that you get authorization from the store. So somebody from the store does have to go in and approve the creation of that auditor. Once that's approved, it's going to have a very much similar look to what we were looking at, where it's just going to be the forms within those date ranges, nothing more, nothing less. They'll have access to all of the attachments that are there. Again, no way to delete those attachments. So it has to be true and accurate. And that's pretty much it for the agent login. Now, if they log out or lock session, they can easily get back in here If you need to use this session, you can end your session and head back to the Bravo thing. There is no way to reset passwords. So if your agent doesn't remember their password, it's not like we can go in and adjust the passwords at a store level. We might have to call into Bravo in order to have that password reset. Ultimately, by switching to cloud storage, our customers have saved 51 days of manual filing paperwork and eliminated the need for 132 storage boxes, which really does free up a lot of space. It's not just about saving time. It's about freeing up that valuable real estate in your store, space that you can use for more loans, more inventory, or ultimately just less clutter. Plus, when it comes to trace requests, there's no digging through boxes. With digital storage, it's just a click of a button. So if you are interested in digital storage, at that point, just get with Bravo. We would have to provide a 60-day notice to switch over to digital storage so that the ATF can go ahead and indicate that you're switching over. Now, if you already have digital storage with your current system and you plan on moving to Bravo with your cloud storage, there's not going to be any need for notice because you've already notified your ATF agency that you're using cloud storage. Lastly, we have the external device for your backup storage. Now, this is a requirement for cloud storage. It does have to be an external device like a thumb drive or an external hard drive. And once we have that, our support team will help get you set up using the backup storage. They'll also make sure that the time of day the backup runs coincides with your operations. Now, that workstation must stay on overnight. And once setup is done, that backup will run automatically every day at that designated time. Any questions? All right. And we are all done here. Thank you so much for your time. After today's session, you will get an email with a few links just reminding you about some of the information that we have provided you today. All right, have a great day.